Welcome to the Sober Social Podcast, a show dedicated to helping individuals in recovery. For this season, we'll be bringing you individuals who helped me through my recovery journey. They played a vital role for me. Through this season, we'll bring you inspiring stories, expert advice, and helpful tips on addiction and recovery. Whether you're in recovery yourself or you know somebody who is, this podcast is for you. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to today's episode of the Sober Social Podcast. Today, I have Katie Sass in the house with us.
Hi.
Hi, Katie. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you. How
Good.
are you?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. I'm excited to have you here.
Me too.
Good, because I'm super excited. Katie's my best friend. Am I your best friend too?
Best friend.
Best friends. Best friends forever. Okay. So Katie's my best friend. My best friend. Best friends. Katie is awesome, actually. I've known Katie for about 5 years now.
Yes.
And it's a pretty interesting story how we actually met. Before we explore that, Katie, I scored getting you as a best friend. So how did your former best friend lose you? Well, it doesn't matter. They lost. That's all that matters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I agree. You did score, obviously.
Absolutely. 100%.
And so did I.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. You remember how we met? I think it's a pretty interesting story.
I do. It's a fun story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should tell it.
Right now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. 5 years ago. So 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're almost 5 years.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So I went out to dinner to celebrate one of my friends' big birthday, 40th birthday. So a bunch of us went out and we're
Nice.
celebrating, had a nice dinner at a swanky hipster restaurant in, I don't even remember what part of Phoenix it was.
Yeah.
But it was about a 45-minute drive from my house.
Yeah.
And being a responsible adult, I called an Uber, and myself and two of my friends decided to split the ride since we lived just a few miles apart from each other. So I called an Uber, and the Uber shows up, and I distinctly remember this piece of it. It was a silver Toyota Corolla.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember what year, but newer. And
Nice car.
Nice car. Yeah.
Yeah.
Decent.
Okay.
Yeah. Comfortable for people.
Nice.
Yes, not uncomfortable. And so since there were three of us, one of us had to sit up front, right? And so I just remember this part of it. The driver pulls up and he sees that there's three of us. And he's like, oh, hold on. And he gets out and he goes to the driver's or the passenger side and pulls out a flat of Costco water bottles or whatever water bottles. And I just remember that piece of it. I don't know why, but I did. And then he offered water bottles. So we're like, oh yeah, sure, we'll take one. And so my friend's boyfriend sits up front, myself and my friend sit in the back, and we're driving home. It's about a 45-minute ride. About 10 minutes, 15 minutes into it, my friend and her boyfriend fall asleep. So it's just me and the driver talking. And we were talking about Game of Thrones, and we were talking about Handmaid's Tale, because that was the season that was getting real crazy, right? And we had to stop and pause and all these things.
Right.
And so we were just having really good conversation. Well, you were that Uber driver.
That was me.
That was
me.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I remember that story. I remember that really, really well.
Yeah.
It was a great conversation we had.
It was.
Yeah. And I asked you to be friends.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I said, okay.
Yeah, you did. And then I gave you my number. And then you did something super interesting, I thought that was really interesting. You called right away.
Right away.
Huh. Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
And so long story ever since then. It's been great.
It has. Yeah.
It's been really awesome.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about our relationship is you've gotten a chance to really see me, because at the time when I met you, that day, 2 days ago actually, or so, a couple of days before, I just lost my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just lost my dad and he just passed. And I was thinking to myself, man, I need a friend. And I just moved back from Georgia, and I was not interested in having any friends that did any kind of drugs or anything around those lines.
Yeah.
Literally, the quickest way to not be my friend at that point was to do drugs.
Right.
And so every other person I knew was just kind of about that life, and I was just yeah, no, not me.
Yeah.
I don't want to smoke or do anything like that.
Yeah.
And you were just I could tell you were just a good person.
Good girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you were babysitting your friends. They were out.
Yeah.
You were just yeah, no. And it was just a great conversation, and I could see, right? And
Yeah.
it's funny because I think I've told you this before. I'd had a dream, actually.
I know. It's like weird. It makes me have like goosebumps when
Yeah,
you tell
like,
me. Yeah.
I'd had a dream, and it was the weirdest thing ever. But I'd seen you in that dream. And in that dream, I was interviewing people, and you were sitting behind me
Yeah.
while I was interviewing people. And I turned to you, and you were like, yeah, you should hire that person.
Yeah.
And you've taught me so many lessons in life. So many lessons about maturity. Because, oh boy, it's like those videos where like there's a bowl and you pour in like water and it's like, oh, I have this amount of patience. I think when it got to me, like it was like, there's no more patience in the bottle. Yeah, let's just send them down the line like that, because I did not have patience. I always want things done.
Super fast.
Super
like
fast.
yesterday.
Yeah. Like the day before yesterday, more like they should have been done before I was born, basically.
Right.
But you were just like
Patient to a fault.
You were
Yes.
as cool as a lake, man. I mean, I come in like a wave, and you're just like a lake. You're just like there, consistent. And I think you've taught me that, because I don't think I could have gotten to where I am now without that consistency.
Yeah.
Without that like smooth, right?
Equalizing.
Like to see somebody be that way. Like, I was like, wow.
Well, let's be honest. I'm not always like that.
Well, for the most part, you are.
Okay.
For the most part, you are. And fast forward, I mean, so much has happened. We'll get to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I meet you, and then I reach out to hang out with you.
Yes.
And then you are just like, yeah, no, we were going to hang out, but I changed my mind. And and I was just, at that point, I was just like, this is not going to work. Me, no gusta. Like,
Yeah.
And then, but then you were, oh, well, you know what? Don't worry. We'll figure it out. And then it did eventually happen.
You know what? And I remember a few of our conversations because at that time in my life, I was in a transition also.
I see.
And I had, I love my Gmail calendar, right? And I remember one day I showed you my calendar, or I went through it on the phone. I don't remember.
But you have a bunch of other people's calendar.
I do.
I remember you showing me that.
Because it was balancing my godsons, some of my best friends, my mom's calendar, like who's doing what, where.
Because I'm the only one now.
Right, of course. Yeah. And, and I remember you were like, whoa, that's like a calendar goal for me. And flash forward to now, you are like super calendar heavy also.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
busy
Shout
guy.
Out Rana. Rana's my sister.
For sure.
She's amazing.
Yes, and she's lovely.
She is.
Yes.
She's amazing.
But I do remember that conversation because you were like, you were kind of joking, but also serious. Like, oh, yeah, you'll have to slip me in somewhere in between these things,
and I'm sitting there like, we're supposed to hang out before I was born.
Right. And I was like, I have next Thursday at 5.
And then fast forward. So then we got to a point where like I then told you, right, about like what happened and like my dad passing.
Yeah.
And at that point in my life, I just needed, that day I was driving actually, I just needed to get out of the house. Because like in my culture, when somebody passes, I mean, my house at this point, my aunts are like, they've moved in.
Yeah.
People are flying in.
Yeah.
For like days and days and days unending. Everybody had been at my house.
So supportive,
like,
though.
Yeah, very nice. But at the same time, like, it's like, it just kind of felt a little like suffering. And then my mom was basically, during this period, my mom was basically unresponsive.
Well, yeah. She just lost the love of her life, right?
Of course. But she was basically like, so I was the only one having conversations, right? And I'm, as the first son also in my culture, like, it's your job to bury your father as well.
Right. Heavy.
And my sister is still in California, like, she has like, her own thing going on where it's very difficult for her. Yeah. And at this time, my brother was also with her as well.
That's right.
Yeah. And so it was just a lot. So I literally wanted to they advised me not to do it. I snuck out of the house. Literally. I like snuck out of that house, man. And I just wanted to get out. Like having that conversation with you about like Handmaid's Tales was just normal. Yeah. It was like I just needed a normal conversation with a normal person who doesn't really need to know that like 2 days ago.
Anything.
Like
no pressure. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like 2 days ago, I just like, because after my dad passed, like it was like when somebody like rigor mortis is occurring. Yeah. Like the parts of the body closest to the heart stay warm. And so I just held his cold hand, but his warm chest. And I could see that something was like going wrong. And it was just a hard time. And then bam, you just kind of come in the picture. But fast forward, right? Because the future was brighter. Like at this point, when you met me, I was also still down, or you watched me go through this period of being down because I'd gone from a 4-year university at the University of Georgia, go Dogs, and I'd had to take some classes at a community college so that way I could get right into the business school at Arizona State University.
Right.
And what was that like for you? What was that process? Watching me go through all that, the studying, all of that. What was that like? Seeing that transition, because you saw it basically.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, rewind and scratch that. I actually went back to Georgia.
Yes, you did.
For a whole semester.
Yeah.
And when I'd gotten evicted, well, I mean, what do you do when you get evicted? You call your
friend. Best friend.
There you go.
Best friend.
You call your best friend. And you flew down.
I flew down.
Yeah. And you drove with me all the way back home.
Yes, I did.
With all my stuff.
Yes, I did.
What was that like, seeing that whole like process? I mean, because I'd been living out of my car and like minimized, like I'd lost a bunch of my stuff.
Yeah.
And it all fit in a
Toyota Corolla. That was there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. So what was that like?
Well, first, you went back to school when summer was over. And then I remember talking to you on quite a few. I mean, I think we spoke almost every day at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you fell back into your rhythm and your routines of you were in the gym every morning, CrossFit or whatever it was, and lifting. And then you had your classes that you went to, and you were such a studious student. I remember being envious of how studious you were because I reflected back on how non-studious I was.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, man, if I had just applied myself like a fraction more of what you were doing. And that was like a total humbling moment. Man.
Really?
Right. Because at that point, I'm already out of school. I'm in my profession, all these things. Right. And I'm watching you and your life be molded and the patterns that you put in place. And you are such a person that when you set your mind to something, you do it, and you do it 175%. Like, that's it. No questions asked. When you start wavering, it's because something has been presented to you that you need to think on and chew on. And then you back off a little bit, and then you'll make a decision. But you never drop below 100%, really.
Wow. Oh, that is the kindest thing anybody's ever
honestly,
said.
though, but watching you and like talking to you, and I remember, especially when you had your exams and...
You're talking about after we driven back and I was now in school here.
No, when you were at Georgia, you did
Really?
this. Yeah, because I even remember you had like a... what was it called? Like student job at the library.
Yes, I did. So that's right.
Right?
That last semester I had that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, even while you were working and doing what you're supposed to, you were also studying and doing whatever, right? You know, and so I remember that part. And I remember when you called me and said, I've decided I need to come home.
Right.
Some circumstances have happened with my living situation.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And
I got evicted. Yep. I was getting evicted.
I didn't know that until months later.
Yeah. Well,
but,
I think it was ashamed a little bit.
Well, understandably so. Yeah. Right. And that was a need to know. And I didn't need to know at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
And I didn't want you to try to help me.
Right. Which I would have done.
I figured. I didn't want you to try to do that.
I would have. Whatever I could have, I would have. And so what I could do is when you said I have to fly back or drive back with my car, I was like, okay, pull up my calendar. There it is again. Yeah. And I'm like, I can take this day off of work and this day off of work, and I can fly on this day and land at this time, and we can get on the road the next morning.
Right.
Because I think my flight landed at like 10:30 at night or something, something crazy.
Yeah.
And you were like, really? And I think you really genuinely were like, who is this crazy person who is
I was
willing to get on a flight to me and help me do this?
Yeah, because I mean, later on down the line, we came to find out that your friends were like, you've lost your mind.
Lost my mind. Yeah, I have like fell down and hit my head.
Like you were flying out and you're not getting flued out. Come on, girl.
Yeah. And they were concerned, the whole thing, like share your location with me. Like what is going to happen? Like what is going to happen?
Yeah.
But everything was fine, and we figured it out, and we drove and rotated and slept while the other was driving, and like straight on through, you know, literally. And that thankfully I've driven across the country a few times in my life, and it was just like, it was a new route for me also. So I remember when we were driving through Louisiana, because I had never been to Louisiana. But it was dark, and someone was Snoozy McSnoozerson in the front seat, and I'm driving, and I was like, oh, am I going to see anything? And I can't see anything because it's pitch black outside.
Yeah.
But it was, I mean, that was a good trip. I mean, it was obviously you were processing a lot of things and had made a big decision to leave the school that you love. You still do.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. And, you know, we, even to this day, you support them and do all the things for them and support them no matter what. But having you walk away from that, but still knowing that you were going to be enrolled in school no matter what, that was really a good sign for me, that this isn't just some guy that's just going to throw his education away, because education for me is super important. And as far as like growth and as far as like learning about yourself and professional development and whatever, I mean, you can take any kind of class and you will learn something as long as you have an open mind.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, I know. Education is a big deal for you too. I could tell that.
Yeah.
I think that was really great for me too. It was motivating.
Yeah.
Because you had gone to school for your first degree at the University of Oregon.
Yes. Go Ducks.
And go Dogs.
Come on. I say it for you. Go Ducks.
Quack, quack, quack. That's all you're going to get from me. Quack, quack, quack. But yeah, so, and then you got another degree, a master's degree from Boston College, which is a great institution.
Yes.
Especially for what you got your degree in, or your master's in. Master's in social work?
Master's in social work, yep.
Yeah, so I could tell too. That was great. And so when I then got back, what was it like watching me go through what I was going through? Because the whole time, even on that trip, I was thinking to myself, all right, dude, you got to make change, bro.
Yeah.
Like the reason you've been stuck in the mud for the last 7 years is because you can't stop doing drugs. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, okay, I need to make change.
Yeah.
I need to make change. I'm sitting there soaking in that knowledge, trying to commit to the change that I need to make. You know, my dad had just passed. I knew going home was a difficult road because I had to look my mom in the face every single day.
Yeah.
While she struggled through, like, the job she had at the time to make ends meet. And
the grief,
right? Like the depression, because it was hard for her.
Of course.
Like, and so I had to watch her every single day go through that. And I knew that was the hard road.
Yeah.
I knew unequivocally, without a doubt, that was a very, very difficult road to go down. But I was just preparing myself for the most part. And then fast forward, so you obviously have a day job every day and everything. So then I moved back home. I moved back in with my mom, and my family as a whole is obviously, you know, being Nigerian, education is really important. I also knew this. And so as soon as I cleaned out, school was like, bam, 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 I need to figure it out. Like,
for sure.
And you saw a bit of that, didn't you? Yeah, so Scottsdale Community College. What was that like for you? Like seeing, because it was the same pattern.
Yeah.
I'd formed at that time.
No, for sure. And I think what you're trying to ask, what did it look like having you go from a 4-year institution with a big name to a community college?
Yeah, to you.
To me, it doesn't matter. Education's education. And actually, you can probably get a better education at community colleges, honestly, because it's a totally different vibe than it is on a 4-year institutional campus where you're up against people who are there because their parents went there or there because they have all the money and they can just blow it on, you know, semesters where they don't apply themselves.
Right.
Where at community college, most people are there because they want to be there. So the whole environment and dynamic is totally different.
Yeah.
Like I don't view, sometimes people call them junior colleges, community colleges, any different than a 4-year.
Absolutely.
I really don't. Because the education and the amount that you're gonna get and grow from is huge.
Ginormous.
Absolutely huge.
Absolutely huge. And you were extremely encouraging through that time because I was really down. I mean, at that time, I didn't really see it the way it is now. All I could think of was like, oh man, dude, like, this is just, you really effed up, buddy. Like, I mean, ASU wouldn't even accept you.
Yeah.
Like, well, but like, I basically failed almost every class at UGA up until the end.
Right.
Where I kind of try to figure out how to sit up. But that time felt like a cake just sitting, waiting to be baked. And like, you need that because you need to balance out, right? You need to like sit in more and all that kind of stuff. And through that whole time frame, I got to learn so much.
Yeah. There's a word that you said to me, and you say it like off, just like blah, 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 just really quick. And it's entrepreneur. And I was like, what in the world does this word mean? And so I actually Googled it, right? Because I'm like, I'm hearing this term more and more.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh, I was part of this entrepreneur group in
Society of Entrepreneurs.
Yes.
SOEZ. Yeah.
that one in Georgia. And I was like, okay, what is he talking about? Like, this is a club. Like, what
Yeah.
is this?
Yeah,
So I
it's a
like
club.
Google it. Right. And I'm like, oh, he is very business minded and like inventive is
Yeah.
really where it comes down.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not going to put a definition out there, but
Yeah.
that's what I grasp is what an entrepreneur is. Right.
Yeah.
And so then you also joined a similar entity
Yeah.
when you were at Scottsdale Community College. And then you told me about this incubator. No, what did you call it?
It was accelerator program.
Accelerator.
Right.
And I was like, what
at the
does...
Center for Entrepreneurial Innovation. in
Yeah.
Phoenix. Yeah.
And I was like, now what is this?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? And so I tried looking that up and I don't find anything.
Yeah.
So then you tell me, oh, it's a set group of students who are really aiming to go for something. And you were going for, I don't remember how big the purse was, but it was like this big competition.
Yeah, it's a $20,000 purse. Yep.
Yeah, the pitch competition. And I remember you didn't tell me or show me your presentation
Yeah.
until the day before.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you had practiced on your brother, your mom.
Everywhere. On the wall. And also Lisa,
Yep.
my mentor at the time, still in contact with her. She's amazing.
Yep.
Oh, man, she heard that pitch like 50 million times
I'm
at this
sure.
point.
I'm sure.
Boy.
But she was like, I don't want to say your biggest cheerleader because your mom was there and I was there.
No.
But she was definitely.
I got to say, for that,
Yeah.
for the purposes of the big pitch and that jump in my life, no questions.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even really tell my mom like much about it. Right?
Yeah.
Like, because she had her own thing to figure out.
Yeah.
But Lisa was definitely.
Why do you think you didn't share so much about it?
Because I think my mom had a lot going on, number
Okay.
one. I think also number two, maybe I was a little worried that if I told her that I would disappoint her. Right. So I like the risk, or maybe I just didn't like, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I said, I always internalize things. So it's up to me. Right. So if I go out for this hunt and I kill, then I will drag like the loot back home to my mom also to be a part of that.
Right.
And so I was like, oh man, I'm hunting. I'm just going to go out here, try to get it. And man, I think that period was probably one of the most focused I've ever been in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. For
Like,
sure.
I think that was probably one of the most focused I've ever been in my life.
I think it started your focus and honing your focus because, since then I've watched you develop a few companies,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
I've also watched you put your mind to other things, selling cars.
Yeah, we got to
Right?
talk about that in a
Yeah.
second. So the big pitch competition is coming up around this time. And then, I'm just honed in, focused on it. Like, I have a lot of people encouraging me to get through to it. And I win. But you were at that pitch.
I was.
Because at that time I had very limited friends, literally. Like, I think that's how we got so close super quick. Because I had very, very limited friends.
Yeah.
I wasn't talking to anybody but family, right? And you would always ask me, like, how about your other friends? Like, don't you have other friends? And all these questions, and I'm just like, yeah, no, not really.
Yeah.
No, not really. And it eventually took a little while before you got to meet any of my friends.
Right.
Because I just didn't have them. I had to kind of make them along the way because I had to be like, you know what? Like, I got to leave this old life behind me, right? And not because they're bad people, not at all.
No.
But because, like, I just felt like I had to kind of leave that behind me and to just kind of...
And you're making different choices. And
Exactly.
Like you said, they're not bad people,
No,
right?
no.
But they were just making different choices and choices
Absolutely.
that you weren't willing to make anymore.
Absolutely. Or willing to be around anymore.
Or willing to be around,
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
even tempted, right? That's the biggest thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, at that time, the biggest disqualifier for anybody was if you did drugs. I'm just like, yeah, dude, sorry. No.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you're at the big pitch competition.
Yeah.
And so you watch me win.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
Well, it was super exciting. Again, I'd never been to anything like this before.
Right.
Right. And so to watch, how many people competed? 20? No.
Like
10?
10 or 12, something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
And so to watch everyone do their thing and then to see, now I'm obviously partial, right?
Yeah.
But then to see you do your presentation, and your presentation was head and shoulders above everyone else. Like,
Wow.
you were articulate, you were specific, you were concise.
Right.
You also were humorous and engaging with the audience, where I mean, I would have been a nervous wreck. Like,
I see.
Sweaty palms, the whole everything, right? And probably like stumbling over myself. But you weren't. And I think it's because you did that nose down, head down. I'm going to do this. I'm going to run through this a gajillion times, which is a real number.
Yeah, I ran through that joint a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
And you anticipated questions because each person you did show it to, they asked you questions.
Yes.
Like, what does this mean? Like, I think I'm supposed to understand what this means, but what actually does that mean?
Yeah.
And so then you were talking about it. And the idea that you were pitching was a great idea. Unfortunately, the logistics of it didn't actually work out, which was super frustrating. It was like, great to see you put your mind to that, do that, accomplish it. But you also, and the morning of, you were so, I can say this word now, cocky about it.
Really?
Because you were like, I'm going to win.
Absolutely.
Like, without a doubt, like you had already seen the future and it was happening. So you were just calm as a cucumber. And like, I think only just moments before you got a little nervous about it. And when you first walked up, you were a little shaky, but I don't think anybody but me, your mom, your brother, and Lisa saw that. Everyone else saw this super confident, handsome guy in this new suit, ready to roll.
Shout out Lisa. She bought me that suit,
which
actually.
A beautiful suit.
Yeah, it was a great suit. It's funny because I knew I was going to win. I didn't know I was going to win. But the same way I feel like I apply faith in everything I do now.
Yeah.
Because I just believe it was for me.
Yeah.
At that point in my life, I knew that was a gift God was wanted to give me.
Yeah.
Like, it was something he had set in front of me. He wanted to give it to me. And so fast forward, right? You work for me now, and you're a great employee, by the way.
Thank you.
I should point out. Last year, you bagged 2 awards.
2 awards.
Great. Phenomenal. Great team player, Katie. The patience really speaks for itself, especially when it comes to working with people. Okay, so, but what I'm really trying to say is the same way you've had a front row seat to like me having that attitude of that's mine, I'm going to get it, nobody can take it away from me.
For sure.
Over time.
Yes.
I don't think anybody, my mom is getting that now, but you had it like from the big pitch to, and after the big pitch, right? So to rewind back, after the big pitch competition, then COVID came. Yeah. And then partners that I wanted to work with and people that I wanted to work with all of a sudden went from, oh yeah, this is great. Like, let's get you in. Let's get onboarding going. Let's connect you in to, no, we're going to contactless now.
Yeah.
And I was back down in the pit again all of a sudden. But then something really great came out of it because then at that point, I decided that I wanted to start selling cars.
Yes.
Right, because I just didn't really want to work for anybody, actually. And so I decided that I wanted to start selling cars. And so that was very successful. That was very, very successful.
Yeah.
And
how many cars did you sell? 20?
Man, more than that.
Okay.
I think I sold more than that. I look at the pictures on my phone.
Yeah.
And I see all of them and I'm like, yeah, it's quite a bit. That was a grind. that like reminded me hard work.
Yeah.
Because I would have to go out in the sun every day as a wholesaler.
Yeah.
Like inspect the vehicles, look at them, go sell them.
Yeah.
And make money. But it was a good time because like everybody was buying used cars.
Right.
And I learned so much in that period about like business, being on top of things, timing, like being a salesman, understanding what people want, understanding how a good product can sell itself.
Right.
Because the same amount of work, if I put in a lot of work in finding a car, it would sell really quick.
Right.
Especially if I was really picky, because then I knew what people wanted to buy.
Right.
I knew what they didn't want to buy. And during that time, your house, because you had like a 3-car garage and like your house was like my staging area.
Yeah.
So like oftentimes there'd be like 5 or 4 cars just sitting in your driveway.
Sitting in my house.
Yeah. Like just sitting there waiting to be sold.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Isuzu? Do you remember that one?
Isuzu.
It was like the SUV looking thing, the boxy one. Kind of looks like an old Lexus model, but it had the big back door that like swung open instead of lifted like a hatch. Do you remember that?
Oh, Isuzu. The Isuzu.
Yeah.
Isuzu. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember that. Yeah,
do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. That was a fun car.
That was.
Yeah. I remember also buying that BMW that like I made that mistake on. when I had to take that big loss on it. Yeah, like I really remember that. That was like,
Well, that was a fun drive, though.
It was.
Yeah.
But it was just like, and that's only because you like love BMWs.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, so fast forward from there, and then I come to you, and then I'm like, oh, hey, Katie, like we're talking, and I'm like, hey, man, like, look, I want to start this business.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, hey, look, like, here's what's going. And at this point, I'm right at the cusp of graduating.
Yes.
And straight A student, by the way, I should say. And I'm at the cusp of graduating. I'm doing really well. I have a couple of offers from great institutions.
Yeah.
And I decided that I wanted to go work for Deloitte.
Yep. That was one of your biggest contenders. Yep.
Absolutely. And I decided, you know what? I want to go work for Deloitte. And I'm thinking, I have to move to Seattle, Washington.
Yeah.
And it didn't sit well with me.
Yeah.
Because I have to move away from my mom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all of this, and then I have to move away from her. Like, she's really who I want to make sure is taken care of. And I'm talking to her, and she's like, yeah, go ahead. You should do what's best for you. But I'm looking at her like, man, it didn't feel right. It really didn't feel right. And that's a testament to anybody listening. Like, dude, if it doesn't feel right, man, God's trying to tell you something.
Yeah.
He's trying to tell you, man, look, dude, you don't have to go that route.
If it doesn't feel right beyond nerves, like,
Yeah.
are you just nervous about the change? No. You were nervous about, like, big picture.
Yeah, I was nervous about, like, big picture.
Yeah.
And then I remember talking to them about making it a bit closer, like Las Vegas. And I was still not, like, even when they offered that, like, they connected me with people there, I was still not, like, Las Vegas, man, I don't want to fly back home. Like, whatever I do, I want my mom to be by my side. Like, shout out all the mama's boys out there. I want her to be, like, in the same house as me. And so I'm really nervous about the whole deal. But then fast forward, and a door opens up, and I'm like, oh, this is a new business vertical. And it turned out to be in behavioral health. And I was like,
which is totally different than what you went to school for.
Absolutely. Because I went to school for cybersecurity.
Right.
And I'm sitting there thinking, like, this is a whole new vertical. But I was like, I can do this.
Yeah.
Because I used to be an addict. And so I know, like, what it's like, right, to struggle and to suffer in pain deep down on the inside.
Right.
Because that's basically what it's like. It's like I don't think a lot of addicts want to be addicts because deep down they know that it's costing them relationships, it's costing them money, it's costing them family, their kids, their whole life.
Yeah.
Right? They're getting robbed basically.
Yeah.
Like in broad daylight at gunpoint. And they know it.
Yeah.
And they really want to stop, but they can't.
Yeah.
It's just so hard. And I'm like, oh, I can encourage a few people because I was able to stop. And I know it's a process that turns into a miracle, but you have to kind of go through that process.
Right.
Right. And so I'm thinking like, And then I was so excited the first time that I saw the opportunity and I came to you and I was like, you should lease me your house. And you were like, no, dude, I'm not doing that.
No.
No, dude. And you're like, yeah, dude, no, I'm not doing that. Like, what the heck? Like, and that was a bit selfish actually, because it was like, why would you ask somebody to lease you their house? But again, it was one of those moments where I was like, I know this is gonna work.
Yeah.
Like, just trust me.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna work. Like, right? And eventually I figure it out and it ends up working with actually quite a bit of your help at the end of the day. Also, you were just encouraging.
Yeah.
Through the whole process. Like, you were extremely encouraging, and you having a background in social work was really nice because I could talk to you. I could talk with you through things, right? Because I basically I basically had to figure this out myself.
Yeah.
I had to read, have meetings, talk to people, ask for, like, it was just a lot. I had to figure it all out in the beginning by myself. And there's a lot of rules and regulations when it comes to healthcare, and you were just very, very, very kind. And as a matter of fact, when we first started, you were like our first therapist.
On-site counselor, yeah.
On-site counselor.
Yeah.
And you were like, at that time, you still had your regular job, and you would come on the weekends, right, and do it.
And it breathed life back into me professionally.
How was that for you? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was in a career path and in a section of healthcare that I fell in love with and I loved. But the role that I had taken on, it kind of took everything away.
I see.
It was a lot of rules and policies and enforcements, and it wasn't the interpersonal connections anymore.
I see, right.
I was in charge of people, which was fine, but there's also that level of separation, right? And I missed having those conversations with my clients. I had clients that I knew for 10 years before I left one of my positions. And then when this opportunity presents itself and you say, hey, why don't you come do this? And we'll have oversight and all of that. And I was like, yeah, sure. Okay, let's try this. And I loved it. I loved it. And doing it on either Friday nights or Saturday mornings or Sunday afternoons, however it worked out because of the schedule,
absolutely,
was so great. And then, obviously no one at my other job knew anything about it. But here I come in super happy on Monday mornings and they're like, what is wrong with you? It's Monday. Like, you're supposed to have the blah Mondays, right? And I'm like, yeah, I had a great weekend. Da, 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 da. Little did they know that I was working 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And it was just because I was finally tapping back into what I loved and why I went to school for what I did anyway, right? Was connecting with people, listening to people, giving suggestions and observations and pointing out discrepancies. And those are the things that I love, especially when it comes to addictions, because addictions, it's not just the using of the drugs or the alcohol, right? It's masking and trying to fix something in deep down hurt and pain.
Absolutely. And I remember like when you first came on, because the reason I offered you that was because I could see that you hated your job.
Hate's a strong word, but yes.
You disliked your job a lot.
Yes.
I remember telling you, like, dude, if you don't like it, just quit.
Yeah.
Like, why are you still there?
Yeah.
And watching you go in, because when I could see you disliked it, and when you stopped, when you actually like did something about it, was like probably a year in between, right? And seeing you being put under a ton of pressure at work and still like hearing about like how you are still there, number one. Number two, you're like persevering and you're pushing through it. And there was no quit in you.
Yeah.
There was just not. I was very impressed by that because I would have left for sure.
For sure.
I wouldn't say me leaving would be quitting, but I would have like gone somewhere else because I'd be like, dude, this is not worth it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not worth it. I'm not like staying here for this. I was like, that was really impressive to me.
Yeah.
Because there was no quit in you. I told you to quit many times. Dude, if you don't like it,
you did.
Quit. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I was like, dude, what are you even doing over here? Because you would cry. And I'm like, if anything made me cry, bro, I would cry once and it would be over.
Right.
And I just didn't understand how you did it. But I learned something from that, right? Like that consistency you showed, man, I was like, okay, that was when in my mind, that dream made sense because all of a sudden I started thinking, dude, if she is not going to quit, like when at work she's being put through like the ringer.
Yeah.
Oh man, I should poach her from them. God.
Yes, you should.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you did.
And when you worked for us once a week, you were so consistent.
Yeah.
You were so consistent. Like, and I was like, okay, great. But I never really thought about bringing you on full time.
Right.
Because I don't know. Like, it was just, to me, it's like, I didn't think like bringing in professional relationship with like a personal relationship. You hear stories about hiring your friends.
Yeah.
Terrible idea.
Right.
Absolutely horrible idea. Because at this time, my mom, I'd hired her also. I'd hired my mom. Within the first year that my mom worked for me, I fired her like probably 12 times. She was getting fired like once every month. And so I was like, I promised myself like, I am never like bringing in anybody like again.
Right.
But man, like, and I remember that dream I had finally played a role.
Yeah.
Because then I was like, dude, you had that dream. And it was right after my dad had died. Yeah, I had this dream where like, the first part of the dream was I'm weaving my way through a bunch of stuff, like almost like a funeral. Like I'm weaving my way through it. But at the end of the funeral, I see that somebody had wired me $10 million, but only $5 million had hit my account at that time. And so I see that wire. Then in the dream, I see myself sitting on like a high stool, on a high table, and I'm interviewing people. And I see 3 doors. And then you're sitting behind me somehow, and I turn to you, and like you're like, yeah, that one's a good one.
Yeah.
And it all really started to make sense. And I remember at that time, because even to hire you, man, you were interviewed by 4 of my mentors.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because I was like, dude, like, I want to make sure I'm not making the wrong choice.
Right.
And so I had you interviewed by like multiple people,
Yeah.
even spiritual mentors who have the capacity to be able to see things
Yeah.
that might not be quite yet.
Yeah.
And I thought you wouldn't make it. I did.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah.
I thought you wouldn't make it. Like, and I prayed and I fasted because I didn't want to make a wrong choice. I
Right.
really thought you wouldn't make it. But to my surprise, every single one of them who spoke to you was like, yeah, dude, like, definitely. And I hadn't even told them about the dream, actually.
Right.
I hadn't told them about the dream. And they were like, he used the term destiny helper. That's the term he used.
Yeah.
And he said, dude, she is there to help you make your dreams come true. And I'm sitting there going like, and I had to like kind of like go, oh, wow. Like,
Yeah.
man, like, oh, really? Wow. And even sitting here, it humbles me a bit.
Yeah.
Because you have been exactly that.
Yeah.
Right. And I hope it goes both for the most part. Like, right. I hope for you also, you feel like I help you achieve your goals as well.
Yeah.
Talk a little about that. Do I teach you anything ever? Because there's been quite some things you've taught me. Is that there for you?
Yes, for sure. There are things that you have taught me as far as you are very quick to make decisions. And as we've already pointed out, I am the slow turtle and I take a lot of time. I give a lot of space and options, right? I'm the queen of 18th chances, right?
Right.
But you have also taught me that it's like, if someone shows you their true self, go with it.
Yeah.
Right? It'll be truth self version 3 usually for me.
Yeah.
That I'm finally like, okay,
Yeah.
this is it. Decision made, done.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, holding people accountable. That's really hard for me because I
Yeah.
don't want to be mean and I don't want to be,
Yeah.
whatever. And this is people's livelihoods and all that. I understand. But at the same point, like something that you've demonstrated and shown is like, but if they're not on the same trajectory and they don't see the goal and they don't see the vision and they don't participate in every step that they need to do to get there, to go there, then it's not a right fit anymore. And it's hard and it's humbling, but it's also like your drive and your dedication is inspiring. And just like what I said about how you studied and how you applied yourself, like even as the industry is changing, you're studying it, you're applying yourself, you're looking into like, what does this mean? What does this look like? How are we doing this? And we need to do it right. And that has been, even in my former life, right? That was big. Like, I am not willing to cut corners. I am not willing to do X, Y, and Z to get a result. No, that doesn't work, especially when we're dealing with humans.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely not. There has to be that factor of you need to give people self-determination. If they don't want to participate, they don't want to participate. But what are the options? And that's the social work side of me, right? So like, I will forever be an advocate. And I know you and I go head to head about that a few times, right? But that's because I put myself in their position. If someone is telling me this and I know that doesn't feel right, they're not going to feel right about it either, And so then that's where the education piece comes in, where it's, if we do this, then this could happen. If we do this, then this could happen. There's always the possibility of none of those things happen, right? But those are typically the results. And I like doing that. And so I think, back to your original question, I think what you've also taught me is like to trust my instincts better and more, and like pay attention to that, and like you and I actually had a conversation because, in my faith journey, it's been interesting, but stronger and developing over the last few years, really. And that's been in big part to you and your family and your siblings, and watching how your life has changed and been molded, especially in your walk with God.
Yeah. You've also taught me quite a bit, like in the same realm, right? So whereas I'm super quick to make decisions, you've taught me to be just a little less on the trigger, just a little bit. Like, you've moved my needle just a little bit, but the little bit that the needle moved is exactly where it needed to move to.
Yeah.
Right? Because I do need to stay quick on the trigger.
Right.
But I don't need to, because I'm the kind of person where if life is making decisions is like a gun, my safety is always off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to squeeze at any point in time.
Yeah.
Right. But you've taught me to keep that safety on, keep my finger off the trigger.
Right.
Like I might not need to do it right away.
Right.
And that's been extremely critical for me. Right.
Yeah.
Like, because that patience has been like a huge factor. And like that's another thing too. The trajectory you're going on is perfect, because I was going to ask you, like, what has it been like to see my life go from where you saw it at, right, to where it is now? Because at some point, like in my life, I never wanted to take anything from you. I remember that. Like you would be so kind as to offer a lot of things, and I would always almost turn them down. Outside of gifts for birthdays and Christmas, where we'd exchange gifts, right? Like I just didn't really, it didn't feel great.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to do it. But there was a point in time where I'd come to you and I was like, hey, look, like I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do that. If you give me this loan, right, I will pay you back with interest.
Right.
And you asked me, it was like literally, you were like a bank. You were like, okay, what's this for, and where's that going, and how's this gonna happen?
I asked a lot of questions.
Yes, you did. And how's that gonna? And what's this gonna be? And
you were convinced I was going to say no at the end of it. You were convinced of it.
I 100% was.
Little did you know I was going to do it no matter what.
Yeah.
I just wanted to hear what it was for.
I was 100% convinced. I was like, yeah, no, like this is dead. It's gonna be like the house, where I was like, lease this to me, and then I'm gonna do this, and then you were like, yeah, no.
No.
I thought he was gonna, yeah. But you were like, because I think at that point you'd seen me, like, basically figure it out, like,
right,
and get it off the ground no matter what. And you'd seen a little more,
right,
like, and so you said yes.
Yeah, I did.
Like, and seeing me go from that to like
what you are today. Yeah, it's been amazing. There's something. So what I was going to say is your faith journey. Like you are so invested. You're all the way in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and watching you have prophetic people in your life that have prophesized over you and have told you various things. Some of them line up, some of them were applicable at that moment, but not necessarily for future. Right. Okay. And so you've had a few of those, and you've shared with me a few of those that have come to fruition. And it's so awesome. Like there's no other word really. Right. And so then when you told me how convicted you were with doing this, I knew this was part of one of those. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Even though if you couldn't articulate that, because you didn't. You weren't like, oh, they told me I need to get into healthcare. You know, you didn't say that because that wasn't specifically mentioned.
I'm not that great at like communicating like the ideas I have in my head until I really think through it. And you always tend to get like raw gold. Like I just like vomit. Like I don't really process it. It hits my brain. I think about it a little, and then I'm like,
verbal vomit.
Katie, Stephanie. I'm going to call Katie or Stephanie, or probably. I mean, that's probably it. Like,
yeah. And so watching that and knowing and the confidence level and the like security you were in going out on this limb, okay, this is definitely meant to be. Right. You know, there was no, of course there was like nervousness and anxiety because you thought I was going to say no.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also this is a totally new venture. Yeah, right? Absolutely. But then little did you know, I was going to say yes the whole time. Yeah. I just wanted more information about it. And also, like I've told you, one of my philosophies is if I have it, I'll give it. And I never expect it back. Right? And so as long as it doesn't tax me, if it doesn't put me in a need column or something like that, then it's there. Absolutely. Right? And some people call it rainy day fund. Some people call it like whatever. Yeah. But for me, that's always been like if someone says, hey, I can't pay my electric bill. Yeah. Okay, how much is it? Yeah. Okay, that kind of thing. And I never expect it back.
And everybody needs like a friend like Katie. But I think at the same time, to anybody who's listening and like maybe, because, you know, man, at some point, like I used to steal. I took people's things. Like on one of the episodes I talk about like my sister's computer going missing and other people's stuff going missing and stuff like that. Like, and so as I was getting better and improving my life, I made a pact to myself that I would never want for anybody else's item. And I still feel that same way till today. You can have whatever the hell you want, man. I don't want it. If I can't get it for myself the right way, I don't want it. Zero interest in it. Right. It turns out that was like a training for what was about to come. Because the field that we're in right now, you have access to a lot. Yeah. Right? And you have to have the ethics within you right? To be able to be like, okay, no, that's not, I didn't do that, right? I have to be reasonable, right? Like, and I have to follow the rules so you can do what the right thing is.
For sure.
But like all that to say, like, it was really hard to ask.
I'm
because
sure.
I didn't want to do it.
Right.
I had our whole relationship up until that moment, I had lived it trying not to ask you for anything.
Right.
And
well, and the same thing about asking me to come on full time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Asking you to come on full time, I just didn't want to do it at all. And I didn't need to do it.
Right.
Whereas this time I felt like I kind of needed to, right?
Yeah.
Like I was like, man, you're going to go look back at the rest of your life and if this doesn't work and you never ask, it's going to go crazy. But I remember you coming in at that point was not that I needed it, but I knew that I couldn't fail because I couldn't like owe you. I just didn't feel like I could.
Yeah.
I couldn't, and especially like the story you tell me of how, and I'm sitting there, it just felt like a lot to me. Maybe to you, like it wasn't like, but for me, I couldn't lose. Like,
yeah.
And so every day I went super duper hard.
Yep.
So that way I could pay you back with interest.
Yep.
And more. I can't lose. People believe in you, right? Mm-hmm. People out of pure belief. And my mom was also somebody who like was there too. And she's like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to get you what you need as well.
Yeah.
Right. And this goes to say you shouldn't look at people and think you can abuse them or their relationship that you have with them.
Right.
Because you might need them. And when you do need them, you need them to trust you.
Right.
Right. You need them to sort of believe in you.
Well, they're not transactional.
Right. No, they're not. You need them to like have trust and faith in you.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you probably wouldn't have done that for anybody else. Right. But because there was trust there.
Yeah.
Right. And you'd seen like things that had gone on.
Yeah.
And so to anybody there who's like rebuilding relationships, first of all, it's doable. Well, just keep rebuilding, keep being yourself. While I was actually talking to you about that,
mm-hmm.
like there was like chatter like about like somebody saying I had taken something. I don't know if you remember that. Like there was a whole story about a necklace.
Yeah.
Like,
mm-hmm.
right. And I remember telling you about that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's somebody saying I had stolen that. And I was like, dude, like, I didn't do that. Like, yeah, maybe the old me would have, but that wasn't me. I didn't do that. But yet at the same time, it was like one part of my life was still behind where people still thought I was this person. And then, but here's another part of my life here where I have people who know that I'm not that person. Right, because they've gotten a chance to see it.
Right.
And it was like just a funny parallel to like be able to see and everything. Katie, you are awesome.
Thank you. So
yeah,
are you.
You really, really are. You really, really are. Are there any last words that you have, maybe, that you want to throw out there?
Last words? Mm-hmm. To be continued.
To be continued.
Because look at this. This is a whole new venture.
Absolutely.
And amazing.
I love that. Like, to be continued, actually. I like that a lot. Because, you're right. Like, there's a lot's happened. A lot's going on still now.
Yeah.
A lot will continue to go on. And to be continued.
To be continued.
All right. Awesome. Katie, high five.
Thanks
for coming on today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Sober Social Club podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode and learned something new. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review and feel free to share it with somebody you think might benefit from this. Don't forget to tune in next week for another inspiring episode. Until then, remember, tough times don't last. Tough men do. Stay strong and keep living your best life.